Welcome to this session of the 11th Emirates Airline Festival of Literature. My name is John Bolchin, I'm the room manager for this room today.
Also Jessica Jarlvi, who's participated for the third time here at the Emirates Festival, and who's published several novels. One of them we're discussing today, What Did I Do? Please join me in welcoming our acclaimed authors. We're often asked to write what we know, and this is usually something that we do very well. But what happens if our imagination or our fascination with things and subjects take us somewhere else, somewhere we're not comfortable? Or we do this as a sense of duty also, to change things or to talk about taboos or all sorts of things that people don't want to hear about. So what happens in these cases? And Taleb Alrefai has successfully written female protagonists and talked about several controversial issues in the Kuwaiti society. Also, Jessica Jarlvi wrote about mental health, human trafficking, and cultural shock. So I'll start with the common question. So is writing to you a documentation of a passing moment or a personal register? What's writing to you?
Ladies first, beauty first, American first, everything we do first.
Is it personal? I think I definitely draw inspiration, perhaps in some instances from personal life, but I predominantly research characters and events because I feel like this is my opportunity to learn something new. I do like to pick characters that are perhaps a little bit unusual, outsiders, and I'm kind of fascinated by that. And being an author is a perfect excuse to learn and to go and ask questions and read up about it.
But also in your novels, you're also fascinated with ordinary people.
Yes, absolutely. It's ordinary people, but perhaps they've made unusual decisions.
Right.
But it could also be that perhaps they've had a difficult past and it's influencing the future, and playing with that. But circumstances are not normal.
Right.
Something that, for example, I've dealt with human trafficking in this novel, so it's constantly pushing out of that comfort zone for me and hopefully for the reader as well, to a certain extent.
You're both concerned, to what extent you're both concerned about writing about the marginalized, المهمشين، يعني مدى أنتما معنيان بكتابة المهمشين أو بكتابة عن المهمشين؟
I think for me, definitely it's a big thing. I do like to pick people who are outcasts, potentially, or have made choices that others might view them as being different, even though they're perhaps not. I definitely would say that I play with that. And I would like to just refer to what Taleb was saying as well about writing about the familiar. I would say that when it comes to setting, I would definitely write something that is familiar, something that I know. That's why my books predominantly take place in Sweden. But also I've lived in the States, so my second book also takes place there. So the setting, I think, to get it right, it's good to know that. But then I think Mr. Taleb's life is perhaps more interesting than mine.
No.
So, so he writes, really well about that in his books. But for me, I have to use my imagination and make up the characters. Sorry, I think I completely agree. I think also that you have that power as an author that you can shed light on issues, but the way that you can do it is in an entertaining way. So hopefully that means that more people will actually read about it. But at the end of the day, obviously, it's the reader will choose how to react to that, or choose what to believe, if you like, or what they do about that. But I think it's a powerful way to shed light on something important, but you kind of mask it in this entertaining novel.
Even it is powerful to let the reader believe that what you are saying is a truth.
Absolutely.
Even it is not a truth.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Beautiful. We're going to take a break and listen to
Yes, sure. So we're talking about comfort zones, and I'm often out of my comfort zone when I'm writing, so I would like to put the reader a little bit out of the comfort zone too. So I'm just going to read a very short extract, but basically I deal with human trafficking in this novel, and I focus on in the US, because I think sometimes we think of human trafficking, something that happens to other people in other countries. It quite often happens if people move from one country to another with the promise of a job. And so I actually looked at the US and women from the US who can make the wrong choices and end up in the wrong situations. And here's this woman who is actually very clever, very bright, but has had a very, very vulnerable home situation and has ended up in the hands of this man called X. And here in the novel, he has just thrown her in to a motel room where there are 3 very disgusting men. So I'm hoping that you're already feeling uncomfortable at that. "You do as I say," he said calmly, "or I get my knife out. Do you understand?" I didn't care. I was still going to try and escape at any cost, but he pushed me towards the men with such force, I ended up on the floor at their feet. A hairy arm grabbed me and pulled me up, a reeking mouth reaching for my lips. I turned away, screaming no over and over again. But their hands were everywhere, yanking at my dress, their fingers groping and searching. And I thought for sure I would vomit, my body cold with fear. I kept twisting my head, looking for X, begging him, the tears fully flowing now. "Please, anything but this." He smiled at that. "Now we're talking," he said. And to my relief, he dragged me away and out of the room. "Thank you," I sobbed, holding on to him as if he were my savior and not the reason for my torment. I think, like I said before, I think if people think it's something that happens to other people in other countries, it's very easy also to turn away from something that's unpleasant, I think, which is why it's important to shed light on it. I think also there are not many solutions on how to deal with it. There's millions of people that are trafficked, but nobody seems to have really come up with how we combat that. And I think perhaps that's why people don't write about it.
So you also write about evil characters or bad characters, right?
They're the best, yeah.
Right. Do you ever sympathize with them?
I think to a certain extent you have to. I think as the author you have to see why they turned out that way.
They've also made bad decisions.
Exactly. It's not always good versus evil. It can be good versus good in the sense that if somebody is evil, they're not pure evil. There will be something about them, perhaps something in their past that has shaped them so that that's who they are now. But you obviously need a balance. If you just have good characters in your book, unless you're writing romance perhaps, that might work. But I think in a psychological thriller you do definitely need a few villains.
And how do you research these characters?
Lots of different ways. I read journals, magazines, newspaper articles, non-fiction books, fiction books. I try and talk to as many people as possible. So it's just really about knowing where to stop the research, because it can really consume you, because you also kind of go off on tangents and you find something else that is fascinating. But at the end of the day, you can only really include in the book what is relevant. It's very tempting sometimes to include something because it was really fascinating. And especially in this book, I think in my first draft, I included quite a bit of research, and I ended up cutting 30,000 words out of the novel because when I rewrote it, or edited rather, I just felt like it wasn't adding to the story, and it had to go, unfortunately.
Things that don't really happen in our lives. And the second question that is related is crime translatable? Or are thrillers translatable?
I think so. And I went to Claire McIntosh's talk, and she's obviously has the background as a police officer, and was saying how crime is very different to here and the UK, of course. And I agree with that. But I think when you look at it from a psychological point of view, I think you should be able to relate no matter where you are. And I think the reason we're fascinated with darkness, a couple of reasons. One is that I like to believe that we are, good deep down. And so that's why we're fascinated by the dark. But I think also that you feel a lot better about your life. If you read about somebody else having all these experiences, you think actually my life is not so bad. Yeah. No, exactly. So I think that's so spot. I don't know if you want to add something.
Regarding writing on crime, في العالم العربي رواية الجريمة قليلة.
Quite possibly that could happen because you're so immersed in your project that you dream about it. So for sure, yes, it can turn up in your nightmares. And drawing on my own fears, I think fears not necessarily always for myself, but just fear for humanity sometimes. I think especially with human trafficking, it's such a horrific thing that, and you read about it in newspapers and so on, it always, for me, makes me just feel dread. And so I think I had to write something about that, but was trying to find perhaps a different angle to what had been written before.
Mm.